Hi everyone, I'm Humbly Anna Anders here on the YouTube channel. Today is July 6th, July 5th, 2016, and I've been shooting some YouTube videos here at my humble home today. And the last video that I left off with, I was talking about politics and how if we're going to talk about politics, if I'm going to talk about politics and engage in any political conversations with people these days, you can best believe that I'm not going to talk about local politics. I'm not going to start with local corrupt Cleveland, Ohio. I'm not going to start with the local county corrupt Cuyahoga County politics. I'm not going to start with the state of Ohio politics. I'm not going to start with this national politics of the United States of America. Well, where I will start to discuss politics is exactly at the beginning point of the 5 banking brothers that started off the banking industry. And I'm talking about the Rothschilds. I'm talking about how a father was laying on his deathbed and all he could think about, because he was spiritually bankrupt, was to infiltrate and to invade different countries with his banking agendas, okay? And Soul, S-O-U-L, that manifested. It really, those agendas really manifested into the banking industry from original past set up, let me correct my statement, original past set up corruptly, those Rothschilds, all the way to present day banking. And I mentioned Chase Manhattan Bank. And the reason I mentioned Chase Manhattan Bank is because, hi, I'm Anna Anders. I took some peace flags to Ground Zero for the 10th anniversary of 9/11. Hi, I'm Anna Anders. Before I was Anna Anders, I was Anna Figueroa. My father, his name was Antonio Figueroa. My dad, Tony Figueroa, I say because he shortened his name for business reasons. Acme Painting and Decorating, over 50 years here in corrupt Cleveland, Ohio, and the surrounding suburbs. And if you don't believe me, Acme. That's what my dad used to say. My dad was good at what he did. He was a little bit of a hustler. He had his own pool hall and his own kind of mojo going outside of the family tree dynamics. And so people didn't like him for that. And if my dad saw you coming from a mile away, he could tell you what you were up to or what you were not up to and blah, blah, blah. He'd read you and write you a ticket of, are you doing it or not doing it? You know, he was a shaker and a mover. And so my dad inspired me humbly, but my mother inspired me too. My dad was always atheist. My mother, she believed. And so I hung on to my mother's apron strings in that department. And my whole life I believed, okay? And what I want to say to you guys, this is honor, sacred honor for me today to share this little story with you, because I'm a storyteller. I want to share something with you. My daughter Juliana got married November 17, 2010. And so the week of that wedding, I managed to get some time out, humbly, to sit down for a lunch date with my dad. And so, because my God told me, sit down with your father and have a talk with him. And I didn't want to have that talk publicly. I wanted to have it and meet him in his sacred mojo, his home, if you will. And so I picked up some crab cakes and some soup and stuff and headed over to his place. And I got to tell you, him and I would put our little chairs together in the kitchen, and it was just a TV tray, a little square TV tray that we shared lunch with. And so that meant we were very close in proximity of sitting to each other. So I mean, literally, think about how big a TV tray is. So that meant we were eyeball to eyeball. Now, hi, I'm Anna Anders here on the YouTube channel. When I sit with people to have lunch and stuff like that, I love having eye contact. I got that from my dad. That's how my parents raised me. So anyways, back to the lunch thing with my dad. I want to tell you, when I sat down with my father, yeah, I wanted to have lunch with him, but God gave me some questions to ask my father. Okay, and I did that day, and I'm so glad. I am so glad that I did that, because my God told me back in July of 2010, when I did have that lunch with my dad, to ask him where he was at spiritually speaking. So I did. I sat down and I said, Dad, where are you at spiritually speaking for your life? Because I know, most of your life you've been atheist. And my dad said, oh, he goes, you're right. He goes, I was atheist. He goes, and then I was agnostic. And then he said, Anna, he goes, I've been chanting 10 times a day. God be with me, God be with me. And I was like, oh my God, like, oh, that is like so powerful for my atheist father. And especially since my dad knew world religion like the back of his hand, and world politics, and my dad just knew, okay? My dad knew because he was a genius, and I respected his geniusness, if you will. A lot of people felt threatened by him, and they didn't want to go toe-to-toe with him because they knew they couldn't, not in the ring of life. Not with my dad. You didn't want to join in there because he'd do a TKO. I don't know what that TKO. He'd knock you out with what he knew. So and you didn't even see it coming. So that's my dad. But what I want to say to you guys is this, humbly. During that luncheon, yeah, I asked my father, where are you at spiritually speaking? Because my God, my sacred God told me to ask my daddy that, and I did. And I'm glad I did because my dad said, yeah, Anna, I'm chanting 10 times a day, God be with me, God be with me. And I said, okay, Dad, I don't want to get all philosophical and stuff about the spiritual stuff, and I don't want to beat you over the head with that. So let's just change channels. Let's talk about where you're at on the planet with work, you know, like, how's work going, Dad? He goes, oh, good. He goes, I just gave an estimate to a Catholic church. I'm supposed to paint the inside of it for, I don't know, it was either $125,000 or $150,000 he told me he gave an estimate for, and he was hoping to get that job. And when he said that to me, he was serious. He was always serious about work, but then I started chuckling. He goes, what are you laughing for, Anna? And I'm like, well, Dad, I said, think about it. I just asked you where you were at spiritually speaking. And then you said to me that you're chanting 10 times a day, God be with me. And when my dad said that, I was like, wow. And he's like, oh. And he had to think about what I had just said. And then I asked him about work. And then, you know, he gave an estimate and he was hoping to get the job at the Catholic church, the inside of it, to paint it. Okay? And so I said, well, Dad, let's shift gears again. Let's talk about something different, because my dad always loved artwork. I said, Dad, let's talk about the Sistine Chapel. I want to talk about the Sistine Chapel, Dad. He said, okay. He goes, what about it, Anna? Because my dad knew art and history, like the back of his hand, folks. So what I want to say is, I said, Dad, do you think that Leonardo da Vinci had a great spiritual connection with God? Because if you think about the Sistine Chapel, how beautiful it is, Dad. What do you think about that, Dad? And my dad said to me, Anna, you know what? And I said, what? He goes, Anna, I think you're onto something. And he sat back and he crossed his chair and he was like thinking. I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. I gave my father some food for thought. I'm going to tell you guys something. I would be the last child out of my 5 siblings to sit down to have the Last Supper with my father. And all I can say today is that I know that my God granted me that soul sacred gift and honor as my father's daughter. And so I'll always treasure the pleasure of that humble little luncheon social engagement, if you will. And nobody will ever be able to rip that from me. Not a single person with their corrupt mojo. My father always had the eyes of an eagle, and he's always tried to instill that in us Figaro kids and his children. And so I know I have some of that today. And so back to talking politics. If we are to talk about politics today in this country, Anna Anders wants to talk and start with the globalist bankers and how all that originated, and then move from that point forward. Because they brought in the Federal Reserve Bank. They brought that in. And so our president, Abraham Lincoln, wanted to end the Federal Reserve Bank. Our president, our last real president, our last genuinely real president, JFK, wanted to end that Federal Reserve Bank too. And where is he today? What happened to him in Texas? And what corrupt political family was from Texas? And by the way, who was Hitler's banker? Prescott Bush. Prescott Bush was Hitler's banker. The Bushes were in banking and in oil business. I'm humbly Anna Anders here on this YouTube channel. I have more to say. So I'm going to get out of my God's way and shut down this video because it's almost 10 minutes long. Thank you. Bye-bye.